Welcome to this specialized training module on information systems acquisition and development. In this session, we are going to focus specifically on control identification and design. It is not enough to simply build a system that functions. We must build a system that functions securely and accurately. We will explore the critical input process output control model, specific validation techniques like check digits, and the economic reality of why designing controls early is non-negotiable. Let's get started. Let's begin by understanding where we fit in the development lifecycle. Control design isn't something you do after the code is written. It's a fundamental part of the design phase. When we acquire or develop systems, we are essentially building a machine that processes data. If that machine lacks internal brakes and safety guards, it will eventually crash. Our goal is to identify necessary controls early, specifically during requirements definition and system design. We categorize these application controls into 3 buckets: input, processing, and output. This framework helps us ensure that data entering the system is valid, that the processing logic is sound, and that the final results are accurate and secure. This flowchart illustrates the integration of control design into the lifecycle. We start at the requirements phase, where business risks are identified. This drives control design, which is the central focus. From here, we branch into the 3 main categories: input, processing, and output controls. All 3 must function together to result in a secure system. If you miss one branch, the system is vulnerable. The most critical controls are often input controls, because garbage in means garbage out. If we stop bad data at the door, we save resources later. We rely heavily on authorization ensuring the source of the data is valid. For bulk data, we use batch controls. Imagine processing a stack of invoices. We calculate control totals before entry. The total monetary amount checks the financial value. The total items count checks for missing documents. A unique concept here is the hash total. This is a sum of meaningless numbers, like adding up all customer IDs. If the hash total changes during processing, we know a record was lost or altered, even if the money balances match. Here we see the batch control workflow. We start with source documents. Before input, we calculate batch totals. The data is then input. The system immediately reaches a decision diamond. Compare totals. It compares the system-calculated total against the pre-calculated batch total. If they match, we proceed. If there is a mismatch, the batch is rejected for investigation. This simple loop prevents partial or corrupted data entry. Beyond batching, we need specific validation logic for individual fields. Limit and range checks prevent illogical data, like an order date in the past or a salary that exceeds the CEO's. A powerful tool is the check digit. This is a mathematically calculated number appended to a code, like a credit card number or barcode. If you mistype a single digit, the formula won't match the check digit, and the system rejects the entry immediately. We also use parity bits for data transmission to detect if a bit flipped during transfer. Finally, validity checks ensure that if you enter a country code, it actually exists in the database. This diagram visualizes check digit logic. The user enters a code, 12,345. The system runs check digit logic. It calculates what the last digit should be based on the first 4 numbers. In this case, expected 5. It reads the actual digit entered. It compares them. Since they are equal, it accepts. If the user had typed 12,346, the calculation would fail, and it would reject. This happens instantly in the background. Once data is inside, processing controls take over. We need to ensure the machine doesn't mangle the data. Sequence checks verify that nothing is missing from a numbered series, like checks or invoices. A vital control is run-to-run totals. If Program A outputs $1 million, Program B must input $1 million. If totals drift between steps, we have a problem. We also enforce completeness checks. The system should NT process a record with a missing critical field. For databases, we design for the ACID principle: atomicity, all or nothing, consistency, isolation, and durability. This ensures that a crashed system doesn't leave half-finished transactions in the database. This sequence diagram shows run-to-run totals. Program A processes data and writes an output total of $100 to the control file. It passes the data to Program B. Program B processes the data and calculates its own input total. It verifies this against the control. The note highlights that a run-to-run match confirms data integrity was maintained between the 2 independent programs. The final stage is output controls. Just because the computer printed it doesn't mean it's right, or that everyone should see it. We must perform reconciliation, matching the final output totals back to the original input batch totals to prove nothing was lost. Distribution is critical. Confidential reports should NT sit on a shared printer. We use distribution logs to track who got what. Also, consider negotiable instruments. If the system prints checks, we need strict controls over the printer the signature files, and the check stock itself to prevent fraud. This flow tracks output. From output generation, we determine if it is sensitive. If yes, it goes to a secure spool or printer. It must be released to an authorized recipient only. We log the receipt to prove chain of custody. Finally, we reconcile with input to close the control loop. If it's not sensitive, it follows a general distribution path. Why do we harp on designing controls early? It comes down to economics, the 1st of October 100 rule. It costs roughly $1 to prevent a problem during the design phase. If you miss it there and have to fix it during coding or testing, the cost jumps to $10. But if a defect or control failure reaches the customer or production, the cost to fix it, including reputation damage and remediation, skyrockets to $100. This exponential growth in cost is why auditors verify that controls are defined in the requirements phase, not patched in later. We want to pay the price of conformance early, rather than the price of non-conformance later. This bar chart visualizes the 1st of October 100 rule. The x-axis shows the project phases, design, testing, and production. The y-axis is the cost. Look at the massive spike on the right. Fixing a bug in production, the third bar, is 100 times more expensive than fixing it in design, the first bar. This visual is the strongest argument for early control design. How do we, as auditors, verify these controls? We perform compliance testing. We might use test data feeding the system bad data, like a future date or invalid code, to verify it rejects it as designed. We might perform a code review or white box test to look at the actual program logic. A more advanced technique is parallel simulation, where we run the client's data through our own audit software to see if we get the same results. For high-volume systems, we might use continuous auditing tools like SCARF, System Control Audit Review File, which is embedded in the system to flag high-risk transactions instantly. This flow helps an auditor choose a test method. Starting with the audit objective, we choose a method. For a static view, we use code review. For a dynamic view of how the system behaves, we use test data and verify rejection of errors. For real-time monitoring of live systems, we use SCARF, which outputs flagged anomalies for review. To summarize, effective control identification and design requires a holistic view. We must gate the input with validation and authorization. We must guard the process with integrity checks like run-to-run totals. We must secure the output through reconciliation and distribution controls. We must remember the economic imperative to design these early in the life cycle. And finally, we must verify them through rigorous audit testing. By following this framework, we ensure our information systems are not just functional, but trustworthy and secure. Thank you for joining this session. Our final visual is a mind map summarizing the module. Central is control design. The branches remind us of the 3 stages: input, authorization, batch, processing, run-to-run, and output, reconciliation. The final branch, timing, reinforces the strategic importance of the design phase and the 1st of October 100 rule. Keep this map in mind when evaluating any new system.